Colorectal cancers are on the rise in younger and younger and healthier people.
How could he die so young?
We are following some breaking news from the entertainment world. Sad news. Actor James Van Der Beek has died at the age of 48.
What's happening? Why is this rising? What's going on? When we're talking about colorectal cancer, this is something that everything you consume passes over, right? Everything you put into your mouth contributes to the health of your colon. Pesticide exposure increases rectal cancer by up to 3 to 4 times the amount. So you'll have a 3 to 4 times higher risk if you have a pesticide exposure. Well, this is what's happening within the gut. It's irritation, it's inflammation. This irritation and inflammation that just festers and holds on and festers and holds on and probably carries on for a while, and you have signs of it, and maybe it goes up and it resides, it goes down and up and down. And eventually what you're left with is polyps and masses and things like that it swell and cause a lot of pain and irritation.
The death of James Van Der Beek, for whatever reason, moved me quite a bit. And I don't know if it's because growing up, Dawson's Creek was this hit show, and he was this teen idol, and if a teen idol is adored by many, there's something about him that is an Adonis or an alpha male. This is not someone who dies early. They are a physical specimen, and so to watch him grow up, live on a farm, have this beautiful family, just seemed like a very, I don't know, like maybe I would want to be like that one day. And then to see him die at 48, it's a little shocking. Anyway, you're Dr. Ron Dummar. I'm Nick. This is the Be Well Now podcast. I'm rambling on. Today we want to talk about colorectal cancer because his death has sort of shined a spotlight on it. And I'm not the expert in this, but I'm the one who brought this up to you as like, for some reason, his death just kind of...
It's tragic.
It's tragic. He's leaving behind a family and a bunch of kids and a wife. And
absolutely. It's the last thing you want to see happen to somebody that perhaps you have idolized or a lot of people have looked up to. And someone who has really been, like you said, he's been at the top of his game and seemed to be at the epitome of health, at the epitome of everything in his life, right?
I didn't even watch Dawson's Creek, but again, there's just the younger version of me knew him as this sort of teen heartthrob, adored and wanted by many. I don't know, just the kind of person you'd want to be maybe when you were 11 years old, growing up in white suburbia. And anyway, that's why maybe I'm affected by it.
And then it touches you. It's close to home.
He seemed just like this really well-spoken. He found God after his cancer diagnosis. You see him meditating in his farm. Like,
what was it, 2023?
2023. And so it's just like, you'd think he would have access to all the best medical care, right? His head was in the right place. He found God. He has a loving family. Like, how could he die so young? And so that's why I wanted to ask you about, I guess, this big rise in colorectal cancer. Why is it happening? And what folks might want to know.
Well, it is really interesting because we are seeing an increase of probably 3,500 new cases every year now of colorectal cancer. This is increasing, right? Increasing exponentially as compared to previous years. And so the questions are, as you're asking, what's happening? Why is this rising? What's going on? And that, I think it comes down to a variety of things. We have to evaluate our environment. We have to say, is there anything within our environment that might be causing a toxic load or a toxic exposure? We also have to be evaluating our diet and saying, hey, is there something we're consuming or eating on a regular basis that may be contributing to this? Because when we're talking about colorectal cancer, this is something that everything you consume passes over, right? Everything you put into your mouth contributes to the health of your colon, right? Literally crosses over it. So we need to be really considerate of what we're putting in our mouths every single day. And another thing that we need to be looking at is our metabolic health and nutrient deficiencies. So metabolic health itself, as far as how well your mitochondria are performing and your DNA, whether the foods that you're consuming are methylated, you're actually getting good quality real food. Those things will all contribute to, or the lack thereof, those things will contribute to colorectal cancer.
I think the rise that we're seeing is in people under 50,
it's
right?
Younger ages now, as we're seeing more and more, because, we used to look at it and say, colorectal cancer is something you get when you're older, 60s, 70s, even older. But we used to really look at older geriatric populations that would get colorectal cancer. Now what we're seeing more and more is the ages under 50 contracting it. And the only explanation that we can really be looking at and say is potentially causative is some sort of environmental exposure or something that they're eating, right? Their diet, their lifestyle, that's really it. And so apart from that, what would really be contributing? We talked a little bit before the show about a toxic exposure like sprays, pesticides, herbicides. Well, these things are linked to an increase in colorectal cancer. You can see the agricultural health study. They did a study and they found that pesticide exposure increases rectal cancer by up to 3 to 4 times the amount. So you'll have a 3 to 4 times higher risk if you have a pesticide exposure.
I just want to touch on the fact that you have a very busy, vibrant clinic here, Community Health and Wellness in Heber City, Utah. You often will have patients get blood labs.
Yep.
And you'll work through all those values. Maybe one reason I'm almost 40 and James Van Der Beek dying in his 40s, it's like, this is the time of, I still feel like I'm in my potentially peak years, but I know it's going a different direction soon. And so health becomes real paramount. And I just think of him as 48, like that's not that far on the horizon. And I wonder if you would encourage men or women out there, in their 30s to get their blood labs drawn and what might come up on a blood lab that could give you an early warning. Hey, you may have colorectal cancer, or there might be other things going on. Maybe what would your message be to people out there who maybe have never had these labs drawn? They know they should. They're like, I don't want to go through insurance, or I don't want to spend the money. But you hear about a tragedy like this, and maybe it's an opportunity to reach somebody.
Well, it is a great, you bring up a really good point, because we do want to be proactive about our health. We don't want to just be reactive. In the medical field, we like to do screenings. We oftentimes like to check for preventative nature, a screening test. So yeah, doing a screening, labs can be screening to say, hey, is there a potential risk that we see down the road, or is there some sort of inflammatory process occurring within the body that's eliciting the inflammation, right? Is there an infection, or is there a disruption within the metabolic pathways, right? That we can correct using certain dietary measures, and then once we identify those from labs, then we can put specific treatments and therapeutics to those. Obviously, we can have from labs, sometimes we'll see reduced white blood cells, or we'll see a dysfunction in lymphocytes, neutrophils, basophils, right? Monocytes. All of these things are indicators for some sort of inflammatory process or infection. And as we see dysfunction in these, we can correlate them to specific treatments that will help reduce the inflammation and reduce the type of infection that we see occurring. Well, this is what's happening within the gut. It's irritation, it's inflammation. This irritation and inflammation that just festers and holds on and festers and holds on and probably carries on for a while, and you have signs of it, and maybe it goes up and it resides, it goes down and up and down. And eventually what you're left with is polyps and masses and things like that it swell and cause a lot of pain and irritation. Well, we can reduce that inflammation and reduce that irritation by clearing it at the source. So we have to get to the source or the root of what's causing the problem. Is it toxic exposure? Is it exposure to pesticides? Is it your food? Is it a really nutrient sparse diet? And we can turn that around by increasing your intake of, plant-based foods, methylated foods, things like that.
What does methylated foods mean?
So methylation, essentially, it's a carbon attached to hydrogen. And it really is just a way of saying eat real food. It's just a way of saying this is the natural compound that exists in nature. It's a carbon attached to hydrogen. Okay.
So if it grows in the ground.
Grows in the ground, you can pick it, you can dig it, right? All of those foods will have methyl factors. Usually we refer to things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, spinach, leafy greens as being the most dense in methyl factors.
I guess when you see a rock star die, you're like, well, they probably partied a lot and did a lot of drugs. And it's a tragedy because their music affected me deeply. I wasn't even a student of James Van Der Beek's work. But I think when you look at the way he was living his life, you just assume like living on this farm and, the way that he spoke about life and having found God, you're just like, this guy must have had...
Seems so wholesome.
He must have been making good choices. And he looked healthy. It's like, I just don't understand it. Yeah. He has all the money in the world, access to the best medical care, probably ate healthy food. And that's what, it just baffles me. And that's what's the shocking thing of like, how do you go so early?
Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons too, that having a proper workup and evaluation is very important, because there are a variety of different areas, as we've mentioned, that you could have an exposure from, or a variety of different things that actually could be causing it. So we've talked about an infection, which is one, like a chronic lingering infection. We've talked about the toxic exposure from our food. Mostly we've focused on that, right? From packaged foods, from highly processed, ultra processed foods have actually been shown to have pesticides and herbicides in them to sure, micro amounts, but holy cow, why do we need these amounts in our food? We don't need these pesticides, herbicides in our food. Ideally, we would not have them. So the other thing that we might be looking at in his case, he lived on a ranch, lived on a farm, maybe out in an area where they sprayed the field. And if they sprayed the ground or the fields that he was in or on, it's possible that he had literal exposure downwind from the spraying of those fields and where he lived on the ranch.
Well, we talk about the cause of colorectal cancer, and I know there's some notes that we put together, but dysregulated cellular proliferation in the colon or rectum driven by chronic inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, and epigenetic factors. What does that mean?
So we're talking about like DNA. So epigenetic is like what happens at the gene level, and epi is kind of above the gene or outside, you could say, the gene. So we used to say, if it's in your genes, that's it. You can't change it. You can't adapt it. But then we learned, well, people who were near Chernobyl, or they were near some of these toxic waste exposure scenarios in life, when tragedy occurs, they had serious neurological things occur, or they had serious things happen to their cells where their DNA seemed to become dysfunctional. They developed tumors or they developed cancers as a result of these exposures. And we began to learn and realize that, you know what? Your DNA and your body can actually adapt. It can start sending erratic signals or maladaptive signals that are not beneficial for the body. And we need to retrain the DNA by using proper methyl factors, making sure we're contributing to the health of those epigenetic signals that are being sent from your DNA, so that we're sending the right signals to build the proper proteins and the proper peptides, so that you have instruction molecules in your body that are saying, hey, let's contribute to the healthy, vibrant life, as opposed to an inflammatory, destructive, tearing down cellular process. So that's what epigenetic means. The dysregulation of cell proliferation essentially is saying that the cells begin to proliferate. They begin to, where they would generally reproduce at a certain level or rate, they begin to just uncontrollably reproduce, right? They just grow and grow and grow. They proliferate.
Colorectal cancer.
Yes, that's the dysfunctional part of it, right? So it's not regulated properly anymore. And it also almost begins to envelop itself and protect itself from detection by the immune system of the body, which is super interesting that these cancers will do that. But they'll start to envelop themselves in like a protein capsule. So your body will identify and be, there's a protein, right? And so it doesn't attack it. It won't destroy it. We talk about, like with cancers, we talk about senescent cells. We talk about zombie cells, all these different cells in your bodies that can actually lead to proliferation. We all have them all the time. And it's our immune system's responsibility to collect the debris and to eliminate them, right? And to make sure that we don't have too many of these old cells proliferating or hanging around and then causing trouble. So that's what our immune system's job is. And one of the things from labs, which is why you want to get proper screening of labs, is if your white blood cells are low, and they're chronically low, and I mean if they're lower than 5, yes. If they're lower than 4, absolutely you want to start taking care of that and addressing it. But once you drop below 5 on your white blood cells, And each of the labs have a little bit different way that they interpret the value that they report. But typically below 5 is a sign that you have a chronic infection in the body, and that the body has been trying to deal with this problem of inflammation for such a long period of time that it has decided to suppress some of its production of white blood cells. Because the white blood cells are like guard towers. They detect those pathogens, those zombie cells. They'll detect all of those cancerous type tumor cells. They'll tag them, and then they'll lead the lymphocytes, the macrophages, they'll lead all of these cells that'll just gobble them up, cause the inflammation, and then disperse them, right? They'll tag them throughout the body. But if we're going around and tagging, we're in a state of inflammation for a long period of time, the body will go, hey, we can't be here. We can't be here for such a long period of time. We can't sustain this over time. So what it'll do is it'll pull some of the white blood cells out of commission. So it'll say, hey, we don't need to do that. Let's just stop identifying or reduce our identification force so that we're not causing as much inflammation. And temporarily, somebody will be like, oh, I feel like I'm actually okay. But what they're doing is they're actually in a suppressed state of immune function. And when that happens, again, you may not be on the cusp right now of cancer or a tumor or anything like that, but it's definitely setting the stage for it.
So that's something you wouldn't know unless you got your labs done.
You'd have to have your labs drawn, to see that.
If folks wanted to do that through you, do they have to live in Utah? Do they have to live in Heber City? Or how could they reach out to your office?
No, if they reach out to our office, you can reach us at 435-657-3696, and my staff will help and guide you to the best way for us to navigate that process. But yeah, we obviously treat people who live in a variety of different places. And we can do virtual visits and virtual calls, and we can, myself and my team, we can work with you and through your diet, and we can develop something that's going to be specific for you.
So let's say
targeted at your conditions.
Yeah, let's say you may be struggling with this, and you've had treatments in the Western medical model, and you're here for a reason because maybe it's not working as well as you'd want. Are there foods, supplements, protocols you might suggest to someone who is fighting through colorectal cancer or who might be at risk for it? Yeah,
so one thing that can be super beneficial is NAC, N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor to the development of glutathione in the body, and glutathione is a master antioxidant. It's a master antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory. It's been shown to be very useful in so many different pathways in the body. Also, it helps a lot with the with phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. With not very many things do that. Actually contribute to benefiting phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification within the liver. So NAC and glutathione, and if you take an adequate dose of those for a significant amount of time, I would say 14 days, that can be super beneficial to your GI, and it can also be so beneficial for your liver. Just doing that one step will probably turn around, I would say, a significant amount of the inflammation that you're facing. And one of the reasons why, and this is a cool thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that the liver actually has a lymphatic system as well. Okay. So there's a lymphatic system within the liver, and it needs to clear and eliminate. It needs to eliminate certain pathogenic factors. It's the most significant organ we know for detoxification is the liver, right? But of course, our main detoxification organ is our GI. Well, the liver dumps bile through the gallbladder into the intestines on a very consistent basis. But this lymphatic system helps the liver to actually manage a lot of the fluid and the inflammation and all the pathogenic factors that it needs to within the system. So here's one sign, if you have a growing belly, whether you're male or female, and you have a belly that maybe even seems tight, right? That is actually a sign that you need to work on the liver and the GI. So you very likely, if you have this belly that you feel bloated all the time, you feel, you eat something and it's really hard to move to pass the stool through, or it takes a long time, or you feel constipated. Those are signs that very likely you have dysbiosis, which is a dysfunction of the bacteria. And this is a key indicator, again, for colorectal cancer is dysbiosis.
What does that mean, dysbiosis?
Essentially means that you have bacteria disruption. It's not regulated properly. So there are herbals, specific herbals like berberine or caprylic acid that we can give people to help them balance those biotics so that they're promoting beneficial bacteria to be produced within the gut and the GI. Okay, and the lymphatic system will help clear. So that going back to this all started at NAC. Okay.
Right, and then you mentioned
NAC and glutathione.
Having a belly and a sign.
That's right.
I was interested in that.
So NAC and glutathione, it all goes back to there. So when we take NAC and glutathione, it's going to help push and empty the toxins from the liver through the GI, and it's going to promote the emptying of the lymphatic system from the liver into the GI as well, so we can eliminate all those toxins that we're likely just storing. Especially at the point where we've had this belly, it's a sign that we're not clearing from the lymphatic system of the liver properly. And we need to get that functioning. So the first thing I would go to with that is a 14-day regimen or even a 10-day regimen of a higher dose NAC and glutathione.
Is that something you could do without talking to a doctor?
I would definitely be guided by a doctor, by a naturopath, by a chiropractor, a functional medicine doctor, Chinese medicine doctor, somebody who knows their stuff and is very familiar with the use of herbs and plants and nutraceuticals. I wouldn't just go out and buy some random, NAC and glutathione, because you do want it to be quality stuff as well.
It's just, there's a lot of things that have to happen before people spend the time and the money to do all this stuff. And some people want a plug and play. Can I just go to my store locally and try something? But health is not that simple. You can always
do that.
It's not that simple, though. Everyone's individual. I wonder what role prolonged fasting might have in working to improve cancer cells in the colon, whether it's an actual case or a on the way kind of situation.
Fasting, intermittent fasting, 16-8 fasting, fasting for 16 hours, which is the ideal for the day. Usually we say to people, start at 12 hours of fasting. It's super easy when we approach fasting to say start at maybe 8 hours, because most people sleep somewhere around 5 to 6 hours. So 8 hours of fasting is pretty simple. So fasting, we've talked about just how fasting is so good at initiating autophagy, initiating mitophagy. So mitophagy is the detoxification at the mitochondrial level. This is within the cell itself now. So we're even talking about the health of the DNA. So if you want to improve your body's ability to make proper epigenetic decisions, or decisions to instruct the cells to have proper responses to these immune or pathogenic factors we find throughout the body, then what we need to do is make sure that we're promoting this process within our body that is already signaled to say, hey, we're supposed to detox and eliminate. That's what so many of our organs do. Our lungs detoxify, our skin detoxifies, right? Our liver detoxifies, our intestines detoxify, our kidney detoxifies. So all of our whole system is basically like a large detoxification organ. And so one of the things that can help with this as well is fasting. Yes, it will turn on the CYP450 enzyme within the liver that helps with eliminating, detoxifying, and it will help push autophagy and mitophagy within the cell. And then also you want to combine with that heat. Heat is actually like infrared. Getting it nice and hot in an infrared sauna is actually a really great way for people to fight off of a lot of these zombie cells, right? To ramp up. Think about what the immune system does. If you get a virus, what does your body do?
I don't know. I get a sore throat.
Would you describe it? Okay, so you might have a sore throat.
For me, the canary in the coal mine, there's a couple of them. But usually the sore throat is the first one, where it's it's a signal that I need to slow down.
Yes.
Now I can choose to listen to it, or I can choose to ignore it. But usually if I look back, I'm I had that sore throat kind of coming on for a few days, and I just thought, it wasn't a big deal. That's my signal usually that something feels a little off.
Yeah, and a sore throat is actually a sign of heat, right? It's irritation, it's swelling. There's heat. There's some body temperature that elevated, okay? So when you go into a doctor oftentimes, well, they should, more often than not, people will take your temperature, right? The doctor or the nurse or someone will take your temperature. Well, they're taking your temperature because they want to see if your body is running at a higher temperature, at a higher rate. And the reason they're curious about that is because if that is the case, that means that your body itself has decided it needs to raise the temperature in order to balance your system against something that may be attacking it. So that thing that may be attacking it oftentimes is a virus. Well, viral particles are actually unable to survive at a certain temperature. So if your body can heat up to a temperature, then those viral particles will unwind or unravel. Now, is it possible to suggest that, certain cancers, tumors, whatever, may have a infection root? Yes, that is very possible. Okay, it oftentimes is at least correlated, right? There's some base of infection there. So by doing this infrared, you're doing it under high heat. So you're raising the body temperature, okay, for 10 to 15 minutes or so, maybe longer. Okay, so you do it for 10 to 15 minutes. You're raising the body temperature, and that allows the body itself to be able to address the pathogens much easier because you're using this outside source to elevate the temperature now. Okay, so that actually is something that can be super helpful as well is simply using infrared heat. It's very, 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 very effective, even at helping with the cells themselves to function properly and activate mitochondria and generate energy for you and energy production. But it also helps the body to fight infection.
There's also, I think James Van Der Beek said that he had issues, I don't know, with was it bowel movements, and he wasn't sure if it was coffee related. And were you saying something to me before the podcast started about if you're constipated that a lot, if you have a tough time moving stools, that could be a sign that you're having colorectal cancer?
Yeah, so long chronic constipation is actually a potential indicator of colorectal cancer. Chronic constipation.
What is chronic?
Chronic means months, right? So chronic constipation, if you've had to report to the hospital and you've been told you have constipation, and they give you laxatives, and then you've done that several times over several months, then that's a sign. Hey, we need to start getting our GI under control. There's some sort of dysbiosis, there's some sort of dehydration, mineral insufficiency, or there's a detoxification pathway disruption that we're just not solving. We need to find out what the issue is and solve it, put the right treatment to the right condition, right? And once we do that, then the stools will turn around and you'll be able to clear out the pathogenic factor or whatever deficiency that there is.
Final thoughts?
I think that we, covered things pretty well. I would say to people, there's a lot of people that are very concerned about certain vitamins and minerals that they should be taking, nutrients. I think the very best thing to do if you're concerned about what should I be taking, I don't know what to be taking, the very best thing to do is to check your blood and to see if you have any deficiencies, if you have or if you have toxic exposure, right? You can do a urinalysis test, or if you're concerned you have a lot of gut-related issues, we can do a stool test or a fecal test or a GI map test. We can see specifically what biotic species at what levels are within your gut and your GI, and if that's a healthy level contributing to your health or not. One of the major contributors to gut health and to the health of your cell wall is butyrate, the substance butyrate. And this is it's found largely in butter. So I would say butter and ghee, right? Because ghee is actually a butter product. So consuming butter and consuming ghee is actually a very healthy thing for us to be doing for our gut and for our GI. Butyrate contributes to a healthy gut wall and will actually allow the body to repair the gut wall when it's been injured or damaged. So if there's inflammation, irritation there, then we need to make sure we're increasing our butyrate so that we can heal properly.
One more time, where can they find you?
You can find us at chwheber.com, or you can call our number at 435-657-3696. And thank you, everyone.
Be well now, everybody.
Be well now. Namaste.
Namaste.